Loretta was 56 years old when she discovered she had been paying for her ex-husband's streaming accounts for 4 years without knowing it. 4 years. 48 months of money leaving her account quietly, automatically, invisibly, going to services that streamed movies into a house she had not lived in since the divorce. She found it on a Thursday night while looking for something else entirely, squinting at a bank statement under the kitchen light. And when the charge appeared, she stared at it for so long that her eyes went slightly out of focus and the numbers blurred at the edges. That was the first hiding place. There were 6 more. Loretta did not cry when she found it. She had learned over 56 years of being a woman in circumstances that did not leave much room for softness, to receive bad news from a standing position. She wrote the amount down on a piece of paper. She circled it. She set the pen down. And then she sat very still in her kitchen chair and thought about all the months she had stood at the grocery store choosing the store brand over the name brand, choosing the smaller size, putting back the item in her hand, and telling herself she did not really need it. What Loretta found that night was not simply a billing error. What she found was the beginning of a question that would take her almost a year to answer fully. And the answer, when she finally arrived at it, did not come from a bank or a financial advisor or a number on a screen. It came from the most unexpected place. By the end of this story, you will understand what that place was. And if you are patient enough to stay until then, you may find that you have the same answer already waiting for you, in the same place Loretta found it. Loretta Jean Watkins had worked in the cafeteria of an elementary school for 22 years. She arrived every morning at 6:15, before the building was fully awake, before the teachers or the janitors or the principal, and she started the ovens and checked the day's menu and began the slow, warm work of feeding children. She liked children. She liked the noise they made and the way they were honest about everything, including food. If they liked something, they said so. If they didn't, they said that too. And she appreciated the directness. She knew which kids were on reduced lunch, and she knew which ones came in hungry in a way that had nothing to do with breakfast. And she always made sure those particular children got a little extra on their trays without any ceremony or comment. She just did it, the way she did most things, quietly and without needing to be noticed for it. She was 56, broad-shouldered, with strong arms from years of lifting trays and stirring enormous pots and carrying cases of canned goods from the delivery dock in the cold. Her hair was dark with silver coming through at the temples, and she kept it pulled back in a net during her shift, which meant that by the time she went home in the early afternoon, the net had left a line across her forehead that took an hour to fade. The thing about Loretta that people noticed without quite being able to name, it was the smell of the kitchen that came home with her every day. A warm smell, like bread and steam and something slightly sweet. The smell of institutional cooking that had embedded itself into her hair and skin over 2 decades until it was simply part of her. She was so used to it, she could not smell it herself. But her neighbor could, and her daughter could. And strangers on the bus would sometimes shift toward her without knowing why, drawn to something comforting they could not identify. She lived in a 2-story rental with a small yard that she kept better than the landlord deserved. She had a raised flower bed along the back fence where she grew marigolds and zinnias and, in a good year, dahlias that stood up past her knees in August. She grew them because they were beautiful and because beauty was something she had not given herself permission to spend money on in any other form. What no one at the school cafeteria knew about Loretta was the glass jar she kept on the top shelf of her bedroom closet, behind the extra blankets, where she could not see it every day but knew precisely where it was. It was a mason jar, the wide-mouthed kind, with a strip of masking tape across the lid in her handwriting. Someday. Inside it were coins, mostly, and the occasional folded dollar bill, and twice a 5, saved from the change she sometimes made selling extra zucchini from the garden at the end of summer to the neighbors. She had been adding to the jar for 11 years. She had no fixed plan for it. What she had was a feeling, steady and private, that one day she was going to have something of her own. A small shop, nothing grand. 4 walls and a counter and buckets of fresh flowers and her own name on a sign out front. She had never told a single person about the shop. It lived in the jar, in the dark of the closet, waiting for her to be ready. If something about Loretta's story is already landing somewhere inside you, somewhere quiet and private that you don't show most people, then this channel was made to hold exactly that. Stay with her. She has a long way to go, and it is worth every mile. The night Loretta found the streaming charges was a Thursday in November, and she almost let it go. That is the important part. She almost circled the charge on the paper, thought about it for a few more minutes, and then put the statement away and told herself she would deal with it later. She had been telling herself she would deal with things later for a very long time, and later had a way of becoming never, and never had a way of becoming the permanent shape of things. But she did not put it away. She kept looking. By midnight, she had found all of it. Not just the streaming accounts, 4 of them, totaling $43 a month for 48 months, which came to $2,064 paid for services she had never once used. She also found the gym membership she had signed up for 3 years ago during a January of good intentions and had stopped using by March, still quietly charging her $31 a month. She found the insurance policy on a phone she no longer owned. She found the fee on a checking account she had kept open after the divorce, because closing it felt like one more thing to do, and she had never had enough energy left after the other things. She found a magazine subscription she had agreed to in a parking lot years ago for a cause she couldn't even remember now. She added the total of what had been leaving her account each month without her full awareness. $111. $111 a month for years, going somewhere that was not feeding her or paying her rent or growing anything. She sat at the kitchen table and she wrote that number down, and she looked at it the way you look at a word that has suddenly revealed its true meaning. $111 a month was $1,332 a year. Over the previous 4 years, even being conservative, she had lost somewhere near $4,000 to charges she had agreed to once, and then forgotten about, and then stopped questioning entirely, because questioning them required looking at them, and she had trained herself not to look. The second blow came 3 weeks later. Loretta had decided she wanted to open a small savings account, a real one, with an actual number attached to it, not just the jar on the shelf. She went to the bank on a Saturday morning, dressed in her good coat, and asked to speak to someone. She sat across from a young woman with a clipboard who went through the questions efficiently and professionally, and who was not unkind when she explained that given Loretta's credit score and her existing account history and the outstanding balance on her one credit card, there was not much the bank could offer her at that time in terms of anything with a favorable rate or terms. She said it with the practiced gentleness of someone who delivered this news several times a week. Loretta thanked her. She stood up, she buttoned her coat, and she walked out of the bank into the cold, and she stood on the sidewalk for a moment outside the glass doors, and she breathed. She had dressed in her good coat, she had done everything right, and she had sat in a chair across from a woman half her age who had looked at the number attached to Loretta's name and found it insufficient. She walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat. She looked at her hands on the steering wheel. Her hands that had fed hundreds of children for 22 years, that had grown flowers in hard dirt, that had made do with less for so long that less had become the only amount she could imagine being given. In the pocket of her coat she had, without thinking about it, brought one of the things she always carried. A small square of wax paper folded around a pressed flower, a violet, dried flat and nearly translucent. From the last summer her mother was well enough to tend her garden. Loretta had pressed it herself and kept it in her coat pocket for years, moving it from coat to coat each season without making a decision about it, just carrying it the way you carry things that have no category, that are too important to throw away and too private to explain. She held the paper square in her closed hand on the steering wheel, and she drove home. Loretta's neighbor, Miss Beatrice, had been a labor and delivery nurse for 38 years before she retired. She was 73 now, and she spent her mornings in her garden in all weathers, in a wide straw hat in summer and a bright red waterproof jacket in winter, moving among her plants with the unhurried confidence of a woman who had seen enough of life's urgency to know which things actually required it. Loretta had lived next door to Miss Beatrice for 11 years, and their relationship had the particular warmth of a friendship that had never been forced, that had grown the way the plants in both their yards grew, slowly and with very little ceremony. They talked over the fence. They brought each other things. Miss Beatrice brought lemons from her tree. Loretta brought zucchini and marigolds. They did not know everything about each other's lives, but they knew the shape of each other's days, and that was its own kind of intimacy. On a Saturday morning in December, Loretta came out into her yard to turn the compost, which was something she did on Saturdays when she needed to do something physical with a feeling she could not yet put into words. Miss Beatrice was on her side of the fence, cutting back her lavender in the pale winter light. She looked over at Loretta once. She did not say anything for a few minutes. The scissors worked through the dried stalks, snip and release, and Loretta turned the compost with more force than was strictly necessary. Miss Beatrice said, "How long have you been carrying that?" Loretta stopped. She straightened up. She did not pretend. She did not know what Miss Beatrice meant. She said, "Long time." Miss Beatrice nodded. She kept cutting. Then she set the scissors down on the fence post, and she looked at Loretta with the steady gaze of a woman who had watched thousands of women in the hardest moments of their bodies and had never once looked away. She said, "You know what I learned in 38 years of that delivery room?" Loretta said she did not know. Miss Beatrice said, "A closed fist can't receive anything new." She let that sit. The cold air moved between them. A bird called somewhere in the bare branches of the elm tree. Miss Beatrice picked her scissors back up. She said, not as an addition but simply as the next true thing, "You've been holding so tight for so long. Holding against the loss, against the not enough, against everything you were afraid of losing next. But the holding is the thing that's keeping your hands full of old air." Loretta stood at her compost pile in the December light and felt something move inside her chest. Not a shift she could explain, just a loosening, like a knot that has been worked at for a long time and has finally given, just slightly, enough to feel that it might one day come undone entirely. She went inside and made 2 cups of tea and brought one over the fence. They stood on their respective sides and drank in the quiet. Loretta did not change everything at once. She was suspicious of all at once, had learned from experience that all at once tends to break, and the breaking is discouraging, and discouraging is how nothing gets done. She changed one thing at a time, and she looked at each change directly, without flinching, the way Miss Beatrice had looked at her over the fence. The first thing she did was cancel. Everything she was paying for that she had not consciously chosen to pay for in the last 6 months was gone within 2 weeks. She called the numbers on the backs of the cards and she sat on hold and she said the words, politely and without drama. And when the representatives offered her deals to stay, she said, "No, thank you," and she meant it. The $43 and the $31 and the other amounts, they all stopped. She sat with the statements the following month and watched the charges not appear, and the absence of them felt like something physical, like a small weight she had not known she was carrying set down on the table in front of her. The second thing she learned, not from a book but from the specific experience of being 56 and tired and underpaid, was that she had been thinking about money in the wrong unit of time. She had been thinking about it monthly, the way bills come, the way rent is due. But money does not actually live in months. It lives in habits, and habits live in days. She had been spending in days and counting in months, and the gap between those 2 timescales was where the confusion lived. She started looking at what a day cost her. A real accounting, specific and honest. And when she did, she found the second hiding place. The convenient spending, the small surrenders to tiredness that she made 4 and 5 times a week without recording, that added up in a month to amounts that would have surprised the version of herself who thought she had cut back on everything. The third thing, and this one took a long time to accept, was that she had confused self-denial with financial health. She had been denying herself things, real and small things, the name brand item, the small pleasure, the $8 lunch that would have been nourishing and good. But self-denial had not been making her financially healthy. It had been making her feel poor, and feeling poor is its own kind of trap. Because feeling poor keeps you from thinking like someone who is building something. You cannot plan from a position of scarcity. You can only react. And reacting is expensive. Reacting is buying things at full price in a hurry. Reacting is missing the window for the sale. Reacting is the credit card swipe at the end of a hard month because you are too depleted to cook and too depleted to plan and too depleted to do anything but say yes to whatever is in front of you. The fourth thing she learned was about debt and the direction of it. Loretta had one credit card with a balance of $2,340 on it. She had been paying the minimum for so long that the minimum had stopped feeling like a payment and had started feeling like a fixed cost, like rent, like something permanent. She sat down one evening with a piece of paper and she calculated, slowly, what it would take to actually eliminate the balance rather than manage it. The number was not as far away as she had allowed herself to believe. The combination of the canceled subscriptions and the adjustment to her daily spending meant she had roughly $140 a month that had not previously existed in her financial life. $140 a month applied directly to the card meant the balance would be gone in 18 months. That was a number, a real one, with an end. She had been in the business of managing the debt for years. She decided instead to be in the business of ending it. Here is where the loop planted in the first night closes. Because the fifth thing Loretta discovered was the actual cost of what she had lost to invisible charges over the previous 4 years. $2,064 to the streaming accounts alone. Added to the gym membership and the phone insurance and the account fees, the total was closer to $3,200. She had not lost this money in any dramatic single event. It had gone in $43 increments and $31 increments and $12 increments, quiet and automatic, while she was busy working and living and not looking. And when she finally looked, the number was large enough to grieve. So she let herself grieve it. One evening of real grief, sharp and honest. She allowed herself to feel the full weight of what invisible inattention had cost. And then she decided that $3,000 was the price of a lesson she would not have to pay again. The sixth thing was about the jar. Loretta took the someday jar down from the closet shelf and she counted what was in it. $41.60. 11 years of change and small bills and hopeful gestures. She held the jar in her hands for a while. She thought about how she had put money into it with no plan, no system, no connection to any real timeline. The jar was a feeling, not a plan. The feeling is important. She did not dismiss it. The feeling was the thing that kept the dream alive all those years. But a feeling without a structure remains a feeling. She got a second jar. She labeled the first one, the dream. She labeled the second one, the path. And every week from that point on, she put something into both. The seventh thing she understood, and it was the quietest and most difficult, was that she had been performing financial invisibility for a long time. She had made herself small in the economic sense the way certain women make themselves small in other senses, to avoid being seen wanting, to avoid being seen reaching, to avoid the particular shame of a woman of her age and her background who does not know the right words and has not sat across the desk from enough people who use the language of money with fluency and ease. She had stayed away from banks and financial conversations in certain rooms because she did not feel she had the standing to be in them, and staying away had cost her more than any bad decision she had ever made. She started walking into the rooms. She started using the words. She started asking questions even when she was the oldest person in the conversation and the only one who had to think before she answered. It took 16 months from that Thursday night in November to the morning Loretta paid off the last of the credit card balance. 16 months is not a short time. It is long enough to grow something, and that is exactly what it was. She did not eliminate the debt by cutting her life to nothing. She eliminated it by paying attention, which is a different thing entirely and, in the long run, a more sustainable one. She canceled the invisible charges and redirected that money. She raised the amount she was sending to the card each month by $140. Then $160 when she picked up one Saturday shift a month, helping a neighbor who ran a small catering business on weekends. She learned to cook in larger quantities on Sundays, which she had always done for others, and now began to do properly for herself, storing meals in containers in her refrigerator, so that the tired version of herself who came home from a long shift on a Wednesday would not have to choose between cooking and a credit card swipe. She went back to the bank. Not the same branch, a different one, and she asked different questions. She did not ask for what she had asked for before. She asked only to open a savings account with a higher interest rate, something she had researched herself first this time, sitting at her kitchen table with her laptop and her reading glasses and more time than she had previously given the subject. The woman she spoke to was patient with her questions. Loretta asked 3 of them. She left with an account opened and a small pamphlet she actually read on the bus home. The hardest month was the 9th. Her furnace developed a problem in January, and the repair estimate was $940. She had been building a small emergency fund alongside the card payments, and it covered the furnace, but it meant the card would not go down that month by the amount she had planned. She sat with that for one evening, the specific frustration of doing everything right and still having January happen. She did not charge the furnace to the card. She used the fund she had built for exactly this kind of January. That was what the fund was for. Using it correctly was not a setback. It was the system working. The card balance hit 0 on a Thursday afternoon. Loretta was at school in the middle of the lunch rush when her phone buzzed with the confirmation. She looked at the screen between 2 waves of second graders, and she read the words and she put the phone in her apron pocket. And she kept working, and she smiled at a small girl who couldn't decide between the green beans and the corn, and she put a little of both on her tray. That evening she went home and she took both jars down from the closet, the dream jar and the path jar. She sat at the kitchen table with them in front of her, and she looked at them for a while. Then she opened her notebook, and for the first time she wrote down what the flower shop actually looked like in her mind. Not just the feeling of it, the actual details. How many buckets? What flowers by season? What the window would look like from the street? She had never written it down before because writing it down made it real enough to lose. Now she understood that keeping it unwritten was the way she had been protecting herself from it, and that protection had cost her years. She wrote for a long time. It was a Saturday in March when Loretta saw her at the bank. Loretta had gone in to ask a question about a certificate of deposit, something she was researching for the Someday Fund, something she would have considered beyond her several months before, and now considered simply the next question on the list. She was waiting by the desk when she heard the conversation one window over, not trying to hear it. It was simply not a private space, and the woman's voice had the quality of someone trying very hard to hold something together. She was younger than Loretta by maybe 15 years, well-dressed in the way that takes effort, the way women dress when they are trying to be taken seriously in a room that does not automatically take them seriously. She was speaking to the teller and her voice was low and controlled, and Loretta caught only the edges of it. The balance question, the insufficient funds, the look on the teller's face that was professional and kind and carried the specific gentleness of someone delivering unwelcome news quietly, so that the person across the counter can keep their dignity. The woman turned from the window. Her face was composed in the way you compose your face when you are not going to let a public space see anything. She walked toward the door. She stopped near Loretta. She was looking at her phone, but she was not really looking at her phone. Loretta said gently, "You all right?" The woman looked up. She seemed momentarily surprised that anyone had spoken to her. She said she was fine. Then she said, after a pause, "I genuinely don't understand where it all goes. I work, I try to keep track, and it's just gone." Loretta nodded slowly. She recognized that sentence from the inside. She reached into her bag. She did not have much on her. She had her notebook, her wallet, her keys, and the 2 things she always carried now: the jar lid with the Someday label, which she had cut off and kept flat in her bag like a reminder, and the square of wax paper with the pressed violet in it, the one from her mother's last good garden summer. She held the wax paper square out to the woman. She said, "This is from my mother's garden. I've been carrying it for 8 years. I carried it so long it became part of what I thought I was supposed to carry. Some things you hold on to not, because they're still helping you, but because you forgot you were holding them. The woman looked at the small square in Loretta's open hand. Loretta said, "That's where the money goes to. Into the holding. Into the things you stopped looking at. Because looking at them hurt. You stop looking and they keep costing you, and you can't find the leak because you've trained yourself not to check." The woman was quiet. She was listening in the way that people listen when something is landing in a place that has been waiting for it. Loretta said, "A closed fist can't receive anything new." She said it the way Miss Beatrice had said it, without drama, without explanation, as the simple next true thing. The woman looked at her. Something moved across her face. She said, quietly, "Where do you even start?" Loretta thought for a moment. Then she said, "You start by looking at one thing. Not everything. One thing. You find the one place you've been looking away from for the longest time. That's where you start." She closed the wax paper square back in her own hand. She was not ready to give that away. Some things you keep because they are part of where you came from, but she had stopped carrying it as weight. It was a flower now, not a burden. That was the difference, and the difference was everything. She walked out into the March afternoon, into the light that was just beginning to carry the first warmth of the turning season, and she thought about her jar at home on the kitchen counter now, not hidden in the closet anymore, sitting where she could see it every morning. She thought about the notebook with the flower shop written into it in her own handwriting, detailed now, real now, a plan rather than a wish. She thought about Miss Beatrice in her red jacket in the winter garden, snipping the dead growth away with the same unhurried hands that had received thousands of new lives into the world. A closed fist can't receive anything new. She walked to her car. She had a Saturday shift at the catering job in 2 hours. She would be tired by the end of it. She would be tired, and she would be 5 more hours closer to where she was going. If Loretta's story today reached something inside you that you have been carrying in the quiet, something you have not named out loud yet, then I want you to do one thing right now. Come down to the comments and write DA1, and then tell me one thing you have been looking away from. One charge, one account, one habit, one room in your finances you have not opened in too long. Name it here. Say it where someone else can see it. I read every single comment, every one, and yours matters. If you have a sister, a friend, a woman you love who is working hard and wondering where it all goes, please share this video with her today. She does not need to figure this out alone, and neither do you. And if this is your first time watching, then I am glad something brought you here. This channel was built for women like Loretta, women like you who have been carrying more than their share for longer than they should have had to, and who are ready, finally, to open their hands and receive something new. Subscribe, turn the bell on, and come back. There is more here for you. More stories, more women, more of this honest conversation that we deserve to have with each other. Thank you for being here today. Take good care of those hands, the ones that work so hard. And remember, the money is not hiding from you. You have just been afraid to look. Start with one thing, just one. The rest will follow.